in a sense, three major cards. Its capacity of, its diplomatic capacity. Its diplomats are good. It has the support of the Organization of the Islamic Conference. It has the support of China. It has, as we heard this morning, a fear, at least, of the United States and Great Britain that instability in Pakistan will be a bad thing, and so there will be no criticism from the Americans or the British on Pakistan policy, except in really, if the army retakes full control, there may be something said, but otherwise not. So don't underestimate the opposition. The first group to come in and came for about 5 or 6 years running were the Sindhis. The Sindhis have a strong group in the UK who are mostly in exile, or at least living in the UK. They feel that they would prefer greater autonomy, that they're under the control of the Punjabis, that Sindhi culture is not valued at its true worth, etc. The Sindhis came and were extremely active, as I say, for about 4 or 5 years. Then they felt they were getting nowheres and ceased coming, and the Sindhi issue has in fact then disappeared from the discussions. Virtually at the same time, and so my policy has always been that everyone should know how the UN system works. And I've always tried to, in a sense, explain how the UN system works, even if I don't particularly agree with the aims or the position of the group doing it. But I think that everyone has a right to know how a system works. So I was seen talking with the Sindhis fairly often, and so I then became caught up by, there is a Pakistani political party called MQM, which are people who are mostly, well, their most active group was in Karachi. They were people who were, for the most part, born or had been, their parents had been born in India, and they had come to Karachi at the time of partition. They felt that they had sacrificed so that there could be a home for Muslims in Pakistan, and they felt that the Sindhis did not appreciate what they had brought. And so there were strong MQM Sindhi tensions, and when I was speaking with one, soon the other would come over and say, oh, and the MQM people, there were all sorts of people getting shot up in Karachi, and they would say, so-and-so has been murdered, etc., etc. So the MQM people also came actively for a number of years, and then pushing the extrajudicial killings, and then they decided, then they no longer came. Why they weighed the thing, they didn't explain to me, but they no longer come. The next group that came, and with what happens, of course, is that once you're seen as being active with one group, you're thought of as knowing more than in fact you do. And so the third group to come was the Ahmadi Islamic religious movement, who are thought to be non-Muslims by the Pakistan government, and so they came. I did speak for them because I work on religious liberty issues, and it was a religious liberty issue. It's not up to me to decide whether they're Muslims or not Muslims, but if people say they want to be a Muslim, I think they have a right to say they want to be Muslims. Most of the Ahmadis were, as was mentioned this morning, Punjabis, so they also didn't necessarily appreciate the Sindhis' efforts to have greater independence. After the Ahmadis came the Pakistani Christians. The Pakistani Christians have both problems from their social status, many of whom are at the bottom of the social ladder. Laws on blasphemy that were passed to control the Ahmadis had then been used against the Christians. And the 1 year where I did speak, a Catholic bishop in Pakistan, it says, committed suicide, sacrificed himself on the courthouse steps in order to draw attention to the blasphemy charge. The Roman Catholic Church has a bias against suicide, and especially suicide of a priest. And so they didn't want to raise that issue. So I raised, not being Catholic, I raised the issue. The next year, the Catholic groups did take it up. But again, one has to, in a sense, weigh who wants to bring up an issue. And as I said, sometimes I've brought up things under my own banner, as it were. Other times it's been just advice. This is how the UN system works. You've got to write reports. When in the beginning, the American Indians used to come to this working group, and they would begin, as do many tribal peoples, with the beginning of the world. And so you have the Adam and Eve type myth. And they only had 15 minutes to speak. And so at the end of the 15 minutes, they were sort of in the 18th century. And the chairman would say, and thank you very much, you know. And so you had to say, look, begin today and bring in only what's relevant from the past. So that finally the Americans and Canadians brought trained lawyers who were very competent. But again, there were tensions because the most competent of the lawyers may have had an Indian grandmother, but he was, a Caucasian lawyer. And some of the Indians, American Indians, felt that he wasn't fully representing, and so ultimately he was pushed out, and there was nobody else as competent. And so it took a great many years for this Declaration on Indigenous People to get across. The last comment I want to make, which was then raised this morning, and which I think is important. As I said, you've got to look at all the various possibilities within the UN system and the declarations and the conventions that exist. But as was mentioned this morning, Geneva is also home to the International Committee of the Red Cross, which is supposed to be, and in many ways is, the guarantee for humanitarian international law, originally in interstate conflicts as a result of the war in Vietnam. There are additional conventions which deal with conflicts within a state, which would be important. And the one example I give, which from my own experience, I had been working for some years with the ethnic minorities from Burma. The ethnic minorities from Burma also feel unappreciated and, in fact, were in armed revolt. And they had a shadow government, if you like, an effort to have an alternate government, and the man who was serving as foreign minister of this alternate government would come to Geneva every summer, and we would work very closely together. And so we got on to what humanitarian law might be useful in the Burma situation, Myanmar's official name, of course, now. So we went to the Red Cross people and started talking with their legal section, and they explained about humanitarian law and the core aspects of the conventions, etc. And so it was decided in discussions with the Burmese armed insurgencies that they would ratify the Red Cross conventions, even though that ratification would be only symbolic. So we got all the conventions, and I said, look, it's too important to do it superficially. Let's, take a year, go back and talk to all your people. And if you decide to sign, then it has to be a real commitment to humanitarian law. So, in fact, this is what happened. But the Myanmar delegation found out that we were talking to the Red Cross people, because, again, the diplomats watch who you're talking with, and they know something is up. So then the Myanmar government ratified the conventions, which they never had before, just so that the insurgencies wouldn't be the first